Hello, everybody. I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes, and welcome to Mom's Favorites Books My Mother Loved, the ongoing story of my rediscovering my mother through books that she enjoyed. This is not going to be that much of a change from last week in one way, or pardon me, not last week, the last episode of this, because last episode was a cozy mystery. Her Majesty's Spinus. This is another cozy mystery. As I said, my mother developed a tremendous affection for those books in her latter years, the last few years, and she would listen to some of these series, she would listen to again and again because she just enjoyed those books so much. One of those series that got a great many re-listens was this. The Coffee House Mysteries by Cleo Coyle, which is the pen name of a husband and wife team, but let's not go there because, well, we're talking about this series of books. The Coffee House Mystery series is shockingly set primarily in and around a coffee house and has one of the things in it that attracted my mother to a particular class of cozy mysteries, and that is my mother loved food and she loved coffee. And so some of these cozy mysteries that she enjoyed, such as this particular series, were particularly enjoyable to her because it was a series that talked about cooking and talked about food and talked, in this case, about coffee. And it was talking about it in a way that my mother appreciated because she loved food and she loved talking about food. She loved reading cookbooks. She just enjoyed reading recipes and looking at them for the art and artistry of cooking because it was something that was very important to her. And so a book like this one, which was fun and comforting and sometimes sexy and about an intelligent woman who really, really loves coffee and cooking, was right up my mother's alley. So this particular series, the character in this, Clare Cosi, who our protagonist, is a single mother whose ex-husband is a globe-trotting womanizer, and now that her daughter has gone off to a particularly fancy cooking school in New York that I don't remember off the top of my head, but everybody would recognize if only I could remember the name. But now that her daughter is taking that kind of cooking course, and she's kind of at loose ends, her ex-mother-in-law calls her and says, please come back and manage my coffee shop. I'll give you equity in it. Now, this isn't a Starbucks. This isn't a mom and pop coffee shop. This coffee shop, within the context of this universe, the Village Blend, is a historic site, a place where famous people got their coffee. It's been a landmark for 100 years, and the whole thing reflects it. And so when you're managing that coffee shop, you're not managing a Starbucks, you're managing a piece of New York history. Or, a fictional piece of New York history, but within the context of the universe of the Coffee House series, New York history. And she lets Madame, her mother and her ex-mother-in-law, talk her into it. And so the book opens with her. Well, the book opens, as I suspect all of these books do, because I have read two of them, and both of them opened with things from the perspective of the murderer. But the point is, when we get to the actual book, as opposed to the murderer thinking about how awesome they are for killing people, what you open with is Claire's first day returning there, and she finds, or her, not her first day returning there, but one of her, first days back on the job properly. And she discovers the woman that she had left to close up shop the night before lying in a coma at the bottom of the stairs. Now, we all know that she'd been murdered because the book opened with the murderer going, "Mwahahaha, I shall kill her." But, of course, Claire comes in and it looks like poor Annabelle has slipped down the stairs. And it's a murder mystery. That's what a cozy mystery is. And Claire, goes into shock and then makes coffee because that's how she copes with things, and then winds up solving the mystery because she desperately wants to find out what happened to Annabelle and to help Annabelle. And so, as with most cozy mysteries, the mystery is, of course, it's there, but in a lot of ways, it's secondary. In a lot of ways, it's not the point. Most of what you've got here is most of what you've got in this book, in these books generally, is the enjoyment of the characters in it. I assume that there are actual genuine clues because the book has clues and it has foreshadowing and it has things in it, and oh, if only you can read them, you can figure out, who's going to have done what, who's doing what. But as I believe I said on the last one of these, I'm not the person you go to who tries to figure out what happens next in a mystery novel. That's why I'm not a person for the hard-boiled mystery where you're trying to solve the crime before the detective, because, frankly, I'm not interested in solving the crime before the detective. The thing is, though, that it's very much more a book about people than about crime solving. Like I said, as a cozy mystery is supposed to be, in my opinion. But I have to say, the thing that's going to stick with me most from this book is the last sentence, which harkens back to a conversation that Claire has earlier in the book. Because Claire is trying to figure out who would push Annabelle down the stairs, and one of her early personal leads is the fact that dancers, as in any particularly competitive industry, can be really bitchy and really competitive. And indeed, some of them probably would shove somebody down the stairs in the hopes of landing a particular role. And so she goes and talks to the dance teacher who was sort of Annabelle's primary, replacement mother figure, the person who was encouraging her to reach higher and so on, and talks to her, and that woman says that she wants what all dancers want, which is perpetual music and an unending expanse of smooth and level floor. Because that's what a dancer wants. When you're a dancer at heart, and that's who and what you are, that there's a part of you that wants that, in the same way that a professional writer will want an unending cup of coffee and for their fingers to just fly across the keyboard, the way that anybody who has any sort of genuine calling can probably think of something that if they'd sit down and whatever it is that they feel called to, that they'll be in a situation where they'll be able to just keep doing it without ever stopping, without having to pause, without being inconvenienced. And the last sentence of this book is, I just hope she felt a measure of peace when the crime of her murder was solved, and that wherever she is now, she has perpetual music and an unending expanse of smooth and level floor. And, it's, because I'm doing this in relation to my mother, that concept brings me to my mother because my mother was very disabled for much of her life and was actively prevented from doing so many things that she loved. Her disability prevented her from cooking, it prevented her from swimming, it prevented her from going places and doing things. And I look at that and I think to myself, I could wish that wherever she is now, she's got an unending kitchen where the refrigerators and cupboards are always full and there are always more clean utensils and dishes for her to work with. And we would all wish that, I suspect, in our own ways. So the thing is, I can see what attracted my mother to these books. She was attracted to an intelligent female protagonist. She was attracted to good writing, to all of this talk of cooking and coffee and how important coffee was because my mother was a coffeeholic. And so this book would have spoken to her on a very distinct personal level of it containing all of these things that she loved. There was another series that she liked very much. It was the Cookie Bake Shop series, in which every single title is bakery object murder. So it was, chocolate chip cookie murder and blueberry muffin murder. I don't remember the author offhand. My mother listened to that one over and over again a few times before she discovered the Coffee House series. And that one also that had romance and baking and cats. She loved cats. The only reason we didn't continue to have cats was because I was allergic. And so that one also was a favorite of hers for a while. But I can see what's in this book that was particular to my mother. But it's in a lot of ways particular to the mother that I knew, and as I work through this list, I expect I'll start to find those books in it. Lawrence Durrell is on this list, whom my father doesn't think much of, but my mother thought very highly of. And I expect that one will tell me a lot more about her, about things that I don't quite know. But this is a book that very much I can hear my mother's voice behind it. So there's a part of it that's a very affecting read for me for that reason. It's not a particularly affecting read sort of series unless you're the kind of person who's really gonna be, tear-jerkery about things. But it's fun and it's funny and frequently lighthearted, but it's a murder mystery, so obviously, somebody dies in every book. 3 people die in the sequel to this one. Anyways, what am I saying? 3, 5. In any event, I think that's all that I really have to say about this particular book, given that I'm approaching it through a particular lens. And that's everything. So I guess I will see all of you next week.